right, welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Growth. This is the coaching podcast where myself, your host, Brian Stone, and business coach, talks to other coaches with a variety of different methodologies. And I'm really excited today because we are talking to Mr. Productivity himself. I'm actually with, and I practiced this ahead of time, so I'm just going to give this disclaimer. I'm with Mark Struczewski today. And all right, I got the thumbs up, so we're good. And look, he's a podcaster himself. He's got over 1,200 episodes out there where he's talking about business development, growth, all things in that space. And so I know we're going to have a great conversation. If you guys are driving, don't do this. But if you're not, make sure you grab your moleskin, your notepad, because I know that you're going to get some great stuff in today's show. So Mark, how are you today?
Brian, I am so thrilled to be here, and I will tell you that so your audience realizes what they're in for. I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. I am naturally this positive and energetic. Sometimes it annoys people, but I love life. I woke up this morning like a little kid at Christmas morning to see what Santa brought me. I just love what I do.
Well, and so that means you're the only one, right? That's the wonderful thing about Tiggers.
Yes.
I don't remember much from that show, but I do remember that. Yeah, Tigger was always my favorite. Awesome. Well, look, I get the benefit of having conversations outside of just when we press record, but all of our listeners don't. So give us a little bit of background about why I'm so excited to chat with you and why we're so high energy so that our listeners know what they're in store for.
Well, like I just mentioned, I'm one of these people who wake up every day and loves life. And I think when I look back on my 58 years, I don't feel 58, by the way. I feel like I'm in my mid 40s. And when people ask me, how did you become Mr. Productivity? And I hung my shingle out in 2011, but I got to thank my late parents for raising me in a structured house. Now, I was born in 1965, so I was raised in the late 60s and the 70s, and homework had to be done at a certain time, meals were at a certain time, chores done at a certain time, and mom and dad didn't take any excuses. They didn't want to hear it. You have to do this. My grades suffered. There were consequences. And I think that was the foundation. I didn't know I was going to be Mr. Productivity when I was younger, but now I look back and a lot of things I teach my clients are what my parents taught me, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Well, and you know, it's not complicated to have success, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to execute, right? And so that's a lot of what you do is you get people out of their own way, you get them into action and into productivity. So I'd love to jump right in and say, you know, what's the thing that you see most commonly with the clients that you serve that seek you out because they want to increase their productivity? What's the biggest block that they see?
Well, even though I'm known as Mr. Productivity, I learned about 2 or 3 years ago that no one calls me up and says, hey, I want to be more productive. What they were saying is, I am so overwhelmed. And the analogy I use is, remember those old Apple white headphones? And no matter how hard you try to keep them untangled, they are always tangled. And the more frustrated you got, the more tangled they became, until you just threw them across the room. Well, when people come to me, I look at it, I'm trying to help them untangle their headphones because we have to-do lists, we have professional, we have personal, we have kids, we have work, we have a whole plethora of things to do. And people are so frustrated because the one constant we all have is 24 hours a day. You don't get any more than that. That's it. And when people are constantly dealing with this overwhelm, and then you add these devices we all carry around with us, it makes it worse because now you have to check in on Instagram or you have to check in on TikTok, which you don't have to. It adds to the overwhelm because now you're not paying attention to life. You're not getting the things done you're supposed to do because you're giving all your attention to social media. And so all these things, they don't get better. They get worse and worse and worse until you reach out to a coach and say, help, I don't know what to do.
Well, I think most people just, they live with the knots and the tangles, right? At some point, they get so frustrated and overwhelmed. They're like, okay, you know what? That knot's going to dangle here. It's going to bother me all day and take away my focus and my energy. But at some point, I have to ignore it and keep going. And you're exactly right. It just makes those tangles deeper and tighter. And, most of the people, let's be honest, that are in business with themselves or for themselves, they wear a lot of hats. They're doing everything all at once. I think I saw a study. It was in a conversation the other day, and we were looking at it that small business owners, on average, have 5 years less on their lifespan than a typical person. And it's no wonder, because they're dealing with the stress and the tangles and the overwhelm of that day-to-day business, being chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief, head salesperson and visionary, and also the tactician, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you approach the tangle? I mean, I know you've got some good strategies.
Well, the first thing I talk about when people come to me on that very first coaching call, we talk about clarity. And when I bring this up, they're like, wait a minute, I hired you because I want to be more productive. I want to deal with the overwhelm. I want to figure out how to deal with my plan. I'm like, yeah, we got to start with clarity. Where do you want to go? We know where you are now. You're overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're fatigued, you're angry. Where do you want to go? And what's amazing is I get this moment of silence, which I won't do because it'll drive your editors crazy. But I get this moment of silence, and their head cocks like a dog. And they're like, they never thought about it. They've never thought about where they want to wind up. They may say, oh, I want to retire, or I want to, retire in Italy or something like that. But they don't think about, what does that look like? Because if I can get them to paint a picture of what they want, which is free, by the way, when you're dreaming, it's free. That's why I'm encouraging people to dream, practice visualization. I can't reverse engineer it and take you from here to there. And so the most difficult challenge, and you probably have this with your clients as well, is when you ask people, well, let's get clear on this. What does this look like to you? And they struggle with that because they've never given themselves permission to dream, permission to visualize, permission to think about the life they truly want. So my first step with my clients is always clarity.
Well, and clarity is power. Right? Absolutely it is. And, look, if you want to make it down the yellow brick road, you've got to know that you're going to Oz, right? You got to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're going to take the wrong turn. You're going to go in the reverse direction. So I love that. Mark. Clarity is huge. So, I mean, I want to talk about that, though, because I think that you hit on something that really I've seen in my clients. I think we punish ourselves for anything that we expect of ourselves that's not done until it's done. And the reality is, as soon as we get that one thing done, there's another thing that we're still punishing ourselves for, right? Mm-hmm. So in reality, there's this guilt associated with taking the time to think. There's guilt associated with taking the time to dream or taking, a vacation, right? So, I love that you start there, but is that something that you see as well, Mark, where people are having that case of imposter syndrome, or they're their own worst critic and it's getting in their own way?
Yes, because people have this vision, which isn't theirs, by the way, this vision, which is usually from the world. And they think to themselves, you know what? I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And I love how Tony Robbins puts it. We're shoulding all over ourselves. It's not what you should do. Okay. What do you want to do? And I encourage people, like I said, I'm 58. And I love the printed journals. I love sitting down and thinking about what I want. For me, I will either do it in a journal or I have a whiteboard in back of me here. I like whiteboarding things because it's not enough to think about it. When you see it on the page or on the whiteboard, it changes things because you're like, wait a minute. How am I going to get from here to there? And you see it. And a lot of people don't want to give themselves, I'll use the P word again, permission to maybe I want something more. Maybe I want something better. Maybe I want something bigger. And they have to give themselves permission to give themselves the gift of sitting down and actually diagramming a plan for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Pick the years. There's no magic in the number of years, but actually thinking about it. One of the things I do, I made a decision, is I know how many clients I will take on per day and how many total clients I have. Because what I don't do is I don't go from appointment to appointment to appointment to appointment. if you do that, I'm not saying you're wrong. For me, I do this interview, then I have some downtime. Now, I don't mean I go out and endlessly scroll on TikTok, but I may do something that doesn't take as much brain power. So I work, rest, work, rest. This works for me. And I encourage everyone, figure out what cadence works for you. It's fine to learn what Mark does and Brian does and Tony does and Brendan Burchard does, but you need to figure out what works for you, because guess what? They have a different life than you do, because you may have 7 kids. It's just my wife and I and our 2 dogs. So you got to look at your family situation, your work situation, your goals, and create a plan that works for you. It's okay to learn, but you have to take all this. It's kind of like an a la carte menu. You say, okay, I like what Brian did here. I'll take that. And I like what Mark's doing here. I'll take this. I like what Tony's doing here. I'll take this. And then all of a sudden you have your very own system. So I think people get overwhelmed because they're trying to copy Brian or Tony or Mark when they should be learning and then crafting their own ideal.
I love that, Mark. I mean, that's so true, because and maybe that comes into some self-doubt and comes from a place of insecurity, but you're like, oh, Mark's successful. If I want to be successful, I have to be exactly like Mark. And you're 100% right. That's not actually the case. Is there things to learn there? Absolutely, yes. But you have to find your own rhythm. I think most people feel like they should be a marathon runner. And really what you're talking about is sprints, right? Have some focus energy, sprint toward the one thing that is your singular focus at that point in time. Again, clarity, right? Have a clear focus, and then allow yourself that downtime in between. Because in reality, even marathon runners in the sports world, how do they train? Right. And I forget the guy's name. I should have done some research on this if I was thinking about it. But the first guy that broke the 4-minute mile. Right.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, and it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, well, he talks about how he trained. He didn't run a mile over and over and over and over again. He broke it into a quarter mile, and he just focused on getting that 1 minute quarter mile, right? So he did the reps to build up to that longer run. Right. And business is the same way. We're not meant to be marathon runners every single day. And even marathon runners don't run one day after day after day after day. Right.
Well, I want to interject here just for a second. So I'm a daily runner, and I've been running at least 1 mile every day since August 29, 2017. Now, I don't say that to brag to people. We had a really bad Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. And during that 3 days of torrential rain, I happened to read an article that was titled, "What I Learned from Running 1 Mile a Day for 250 Days." And I told my wife, I'm going to try this. And so August 29, 2017, I started running. I haven't missed a day yet. If the weather's bad, like thunder and lightning, or it's really cold, I'll actually run a mile in my house. Now, I'm not doing it to impress anyone. I'm doing it because I know that when you're healthy and when you're healthy and fit, we'll talk about this in a second, you're more productive. But here's the thing. I wear an Apple Watch, and I use heart range rates on there. And the watch will tell me if I'm running too fast, because if you run too fast, you go from aerobic to anaerobic, which means you're outside the fat burning zone. So it'll tell me, Siri will come on my phone and on my ears and say, hey, your heart rate's too high. And so we have to take the analogy and put it in real life. If you're running, actually then you start doing inferior work because you're pushing the rope. And so you need that proverbial voice in your head saying, whoa, we need to take a break. Even if it's a 5-minute break, a 10-minute break, we need to take a break, because I see a lot of people suffering from burnout because they don't take breaks. And I'd like to talk about breaks if we can too, because I think the power of a micro break is incredibly powerful.
Let's do that, Mark. I'd love to talk about breaks, because, you're exactly right. That realistically, I mean, most people hire a coach because they need that voice, right? They need that person to say, hey, sometimes you need to slow down or you start doing damage, right? So how do you recommend that your clients take those micro breaks and it actually ends up, being more productive?
Micro breaks are anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So I encourage people when you begin, that's the key word, begin to feel overwhelmed, frustrated, stressed. I encourage you to push back from your computer and take a walk outside. Do not get on another piece of technology. Stand out there and take some deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Now, if you want to take it to the next level and it's safe to do, take off your shoes and socks, stand on the ground, because what they found is this concept called grounding or earthing, not earthlings, earthing, which means it can actually suck out the bad energy, which causes inflammation in our bodies. And kind of like the ground is grounding you. And so I encourage people to do that. If you have time, what I like to do, I live in Houston, Texas. I like to have what I call a win-win-win situation. So I schedule an hour to read every day. It's a non-negotiable for me. So if it's sunny out, I'll go sit out in the sun with my bare feet on the ground, breathing in fresh air, reading my Kindle. So that's a win-win-win. But it doesn't have to be that long. If you just push away from your technology, go outside and just take several deep breaths, maybe do it every hour. I encourage you to do that, because what that's going to do, your eyeballs don't need to keep looking at the screens. That's why when people go outside and they go, I tried, it didn't work. Were you on your phone? Yeah. You missed that part, didn't you? Don't be on your tech. You can leave your phone behind for 5 minutes while you take this break. I'm telling you, Brian, that simple micro break, as many times you need, because there's no pharmaceutical interventions here, it's going to give you so much energy because you're getting an all natural hit of dopamine.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I hadn't heard somebody explain the process like that, Mark, but I do a lot of the same things myself. And you can't see it, but on this back wall, I have a ukulele. And
oh, nice.
In between my focused time blocks, that is what I go to, because it's nothing digital. It makes me happy. It also builds a different skill that I want to build, or rather maintains one, but it doesn't take the same kind of mental energy, right? I can just pluck around. And also, by the way, it's impossible to be stressed if you're holding a ukulele. just an FYI. And I'm a big guy, so I know it looks ridiculous. So in the same vein, I'm sitting there smiling, knowing how ridiculous I probably look, and it makes me happy, right?
You play it outside?
I do.
Oh,
I do. Absolutely. Yeah. Now I'm in the Midwest, so we have all 4 seasons. So I probably don't have as many good outside days as you do down in Texas, but every time I can, absolutely. I get outside. And you're right about grounding too. We hear it as the insult. If you follow social media, people say, go touch grass, right? And I don't like the connotation that they say it in when people say that. But in reality, there's a reason why that is a common vernacular. It's because there is a transformative effect when you ground yourself with the earth beneath your feet.
And it's free.
100% free.
And you don't need anybody's permission. Just like when I go out and sit in the sun, it's free. So I'm a big fan of free first, and sun is free, fresh air is free, grounding's free. I mean, yeah, you may have to buy a book, but I mean, come on, we're talking about your health. And if you can, I have a few comments about health and wellness. If we can jump into that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Go ahead.
So healthy people are more productive people. You cannot be 300 pounds, eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacking with cupcakes and ho-hos and be productive, because you won't have the energy. So I encourage people to take care of themselves. I'm a big fan of the Tim Ferriss slow carb diet. And what this is 6 days of low carb. And then the 7th day, you can literally eat whatever you want to eat. So we're recording this on a Friday. Tomorrow's my cheat day. I'm excited about that. And yeah. I've been losing weight and I'm getting more energy and I'm sleeping better. It feels great. But I'm not saying you should be on the slow carb diet. I'm not saying you should be in any particular diet. What I'm saying is you have to look at, are you getting exercise? Are you drinking a lot of water? Or are you drinking a lot of sugary drinks? Are you eating a lot of processed foods? You need to do your own research on this. But I'm telling you, people who take care of their health are far more productive because they have more energy. And I didn't get serious about my health until my mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2018, and then she passed away from it in 2022. But when she got diagnosed, I'm like, uh-oh, I need to take care of myself. And my goal is to last to 110, if not longer. And you can't do that if you don't take care of yourself. So I just implore your audience to do their own research and take care of yourself. I don't care if you're 20 or if you're 60. Take care of yourself, because if you want to be productive at work and at home, you have to take care of your health.
Well, it's fuel, right? I'll never forget one of the most transformative coaches that I had was a transformation coach. Big surprise, right? Several years back, and he would start our calls by reminding me, "Hey, what's your fuel today? What's your fuel? Are you running on high octane, or did you skip your lunch today because you had something that you felt like was more important?" Right. Mm-hmm. And what was amazing is he was so dialed into it, and that mind-body connection, that he could tell just from the tone in my voice, Mark, if I was off. Right. He couldn't necessarily identify what it was, but either it was I didn't get a good night's sleep, or I missed a healthy breakfast, or it's wintertime and I haven't spent enough time actually getting some sun, whatever it was. But he was so dialed into it that the first conversation that we had at the very beginning of our call, he'd be able to tell if my energy level was low. Right. So I love that you talk about that, because fuel is everything, right? I mean, you wouldn't 100%. You wouldn't take a sports car and fill it with ethanol, right? I mean, it's not going to function the way it needs to, right? And so if you want to be a Maserati, if you want to be like have that level of production, then you got to be worried about your intake.
100%. And like, I drink the evil Diet Coke, and health people hit me up on social media. That's not good for you. I said, look, relax. I only have it from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's it. The rest of the day, I'm having either water or that sparkling ice water with no sugar added. But I am very conscious of what I'm eating. And it doesn't take that much research. You can just go Google, how do I eat healthy? There's no perfect diet. You need to figure out what works for you. I like the slow carb diet because I get to have a cheat day once a week, and I go off the rails on a cheat day. But then I monitor my blood glucose every single day, except for cheat day, because I know it's going to be high. And my blood glucose comes right back down after I come off my cheat day. But you need to find out what works for you, dear listener. You need to figure out what works for you. And here's the thing. You can experiment. You can try slow carb. You can try keto. You can try whatever, and figure out what works for you. Like, it's just me and my wife. But if you got a whole family, well, maybe it's your whole family. You look at them like, man, we're all kind of pudgy. Maybe we need to all go on this family kick of being healthy. Now, the kids probably won't like it, but you got to think about their future, because if you eat well when you're young and you get that discipline down, then when you're 30, 40 years old, you may be running a marathon because your parents taught you well. So there's no excuses. It's not an age thing. If you're alive, you need to take care of your health.
Well, and I'm glad that you touched on it's different for everybody, right? And I'll speak to my own situation. So I have a son that's on the spectrum. He has sensory issues with food, and so the excuses that are easy for me to come up with is like, well, I don't want to cook 2 dinners, and he'll only eat cheeseburgers, so I'm going to have a cheeseburger. No, I can have a turkey burger, right? I can have something. I can fix myself, something else that's healthier. So I think that you've got to find your rhythm, right? Whatever your personal rhythm is.
100%. I've got a cousin of mine who is really interested in the slow carb diet. And he goes, well, the rest of the family I live with, because he's single and he lives with another family. And he goes, they don't like the slow carb. I said, you can create. My wife makes this delicious concoction. It's ground beef, organic green beans, organic tomatoes, organic black beans. Okay. I said, you can make a big bowl of that. And when they sit down for their meal with lasagna or pizza, just have your meal or not have anything. And he's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, there's no rule saying you have to eat the food that they prepare. You can just go get your food, heat it up, and sit down. You're still eating. It's different food. So a lot of people, you're right, make excuses. Well, I can't do this because what are people going to think? Who cares what other people think? That's not, your health is important to you. They may go, whatever. So I just encourage people to, again, figure out what works for you. Obviously, the less people you have in your house, the easier it is. But don't make excuses. Don't say, "Oh, I don't know how to cook." My wife literally just cooked some ground beef, puts the beans, the green beans, and the tomatoes in, mix it up. She tried it out. It was delicious. So experiment. Don't make excuses. In this age of Google and books and podcasts, there's no excuse for you not to find something that works for you.
I think this brings up a topic that actually applies to the coaching world too. There's these ingrained habits, right? Mm-hmm. So I think first part of whether it's clean eating, whether it's better work productivity, whatever it is, you've got to have the clarity. You have to identify what are the habits that I have that aren't serving me, right? I was part of the Clean Plate Club, love my mom to death, you know what I mean? But it was like, if it was there, I had to eat it. And there was starving children that couldn't have this food, and how dare I not finish my plate, so I had to first acknowledge that I've got to let go of these habits that are ingrained. They're so deeply ingrained into my mind before I can actually start adapting new habits that are serving my goals, serving my energy, right? It all starts with clarity again.
The reason why I was laughing so hard is there's two foods my mother used to make me sit at the table until I finished it, and I hate it. To this day, I won't eat them. Lima beans and beets. My mother would say, look, same thing. They're starving people in China. You need to eat the food. And of course, if I was smart, I would eat them when they're warm, but now they're cold because I kind of like...
It's just getting worse and worse. Yes.
And my parents didn't bend. They're like, you're not getting up from the table until you finish these. Oh my gosh. So I will not, if I see lima beans or I see beets, I have flashbacks to my childhood.
Oh, come on, Mark, a beet salad. There's some fantastic beets. So that's healthy. It's delicious. Nope. You won't touch it.
I also don't touch any of the cruciferous fruits. Vegetables. I don't like broccoli, cauliflower, kale. I know it's really good for me. I can't stand the smell. I can't stand that texture. So I find other things. Fortunately, I do like black beans. Tim Ferriss says that's the best way to lose weight is black beans. I don't do it. Again, I customize it for me. He says black beans at every meal. I don't do that. Okay. I don't. So I probably get better results if I did, but hey, the weight's coming off. My blood glucose is coming down. It works out pretty good, but you got to remember, you got to figure out what works for you. But if you don't like a fruit or a vegetable or whatever, don't choke it down like a lima bean or the beet. Find an alternative that you can give you the same health benefits.
Yeah, and find joy in it, right? Yeah. Because if you find joy in it, then it'll become a habit that you want to repeat and continue. And absolutely.
Beets don't give me any joy at all.
They don't give you any joy. Yeah, I can understand that. Well, look, I know that we've talked about fuel. We've talked about, the productivity effect of actually giving those micro breaks. We've talked a lot about, grounding yourself. So much good stuff, Mark. But if you got one more in you, what would be one parting thing that you would give our listeners that would be a recommendation they can put into place to actually unlock some growth for themselves?
I have a saying that it's going to be one of the first sayings that goes on my swag when I eventually come out with it. It's tell your time where to go instead of wondering where it went. What I mean by that, 7 days a week, including weekends, holidays, and vacations. Live intentionally. So if you're just going to binge watch Netflix all day tomorrow, then actually say to yourself, I'm going to just be a slug and I'm going to binge watch Netflix all day long. And do it intentionally. A lot of people do this Monday through Friday. But they go, the weekends, the holidays, the vacations, whatever. No, you should live intentionally. So if you're going on vacation and you're going to spend all day at the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, well, say, I'm going to spend all day at the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, because a lot of people don't stop and think about that. I actually journal every day. I'm like, today's going to be a lazy day, or I had a bad day today. Every day is not going to be productive. Every day is not going to be full of joy and positivity and happiness. So I just tell people, make sure you're doing things intentionally. Now, for the business, what I encourage you to do is I have a 3-step process I teach people. Your why feeds your goals, which feeds your plan. So a lot of people come to me and say, well, I want to learn how to plan better. And the first thing I ask them is about their why. And they kind of look at me confused, like, what does that have to do with anything? I'm like, well, because your why feeds your goals. So your goals should get you to your why. And so if you don't have goals, what are you putting on your plan? So I tell people, you need to spend 80% of your working hours working on goals that are going to move you towards your why. If you don't have your why and you have vague goals, your plan is going to be like, I don't know, I'll just put random stuff on there. So keep that in your mind, listener. Why feeds your goals, feeds your plan. If you think about it that way, you're going to be a lot more successful. Now, if you say, I don't know what my why is, here's an idea. Why don't you gift yourself an hour where you go away without technology and you get a notebook and you just sit there and just brainstorm of what your why could be and what some goals could be that tie to your why so that you can begin proper planning.
I love that. Couldn't have said it any better. Your why feeds your goals feed your plan. Love it. I mean, to kind of bring in that analogy we said earlier, right? You got to start with Oz. You got to know what Oz looks like, and then your plan is your yellow brick road. You've got to have alignment, because otherwise, as you mentioned, you're in that time loop, right? I love the way you said that. Absolutely, you should have that on your swag. Don't tell your time where to go instead of where it went. Absolutely love that. What's
interesting is I like the question why. So people go, yeah, I'm going to go to Oz. Why? And they're like, why do you want to retire? Or why do you want to move to Italy? Or why do you want to start a podcast? And people look at me like, what do you mean why? Like, do you know why you want to go to Oz? And it's a simple question, and people like get the smile on their face. I'm like, I never thought about that. Well, why? Did someone tell you have to go to Oz? Well, no. And they don't think about it. So there's another piece of advice for your listener. Why do you want to do whatever it is you want to do? Is it you or is it someone else?
And gosh, there's so much good stuff here, Mark. I know that we could go all day long, but it comes into, are you living your life for yourself, or are you living your life based on the expectations of others, or what you think you should be doing, right? So I think that question is so important. It's not just about having your why, it's why it is what it is. If you can't answer that, then you need to sit and reflect and spend some time with yourself, right?
100%.
Love it. So much clarity in the episode today. Love that we started that way. We're going to end that way too, Mark. And look, if you guys are listening and you really enjoy the conversation, make sure that you connect with Mark. Mark, go ahead and give us a quick shout out on the best way for people to connect with you.
My website is MrProductivity.com, MISTER, all spelled out, MrProductivity.com. There you can find out about my podcast, the Mr. Productivity Podcast. You can read my blog, find out where I am on social media, usually Mr. Productivity, except for X. I can't use it because it's not enough characters. And listen, this is who I am. What you heard in the podcast today, or you see on the short later on in social media, this is who I am. I wake up every day, like I said at the beginning of the show, like I used to wake up at Christmas morning to see what Santa brought me. And I hope every listener, every viewer has that feeling. I'm like, I woke up today. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm glad I woke up today. It's all about positivity. It's all about happiness. And I really think, Brian, they should change the spelling to happiness to the way that Will Smith movie had it, HAPPYNESS instead of the I, because I like the word happy being in there. So when I will talk about happiness on social media, I will misspell it intentionally, which drives Grammarly crazy. But I'll say this is a nod to the Will Smith movie. I think happiness should be spelled with a Y and not an I. But that's just, I can't change it, but except for when I'm posting it.
Yeah. Hey, I love that. The focus on positivity, the focus on being intentional, telling your time where to go and not where it went. So much good stuff, Mark. Really appreciate your time today.
Actually, it's tell your time where to go instead of wondering where it went.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting.
Yeah. A lot of people will go, where did my time go today? Because don't be in that position. Tell your time where to go and don't wonder where it went. Because I would say a vast majority of people are just wondering, it's Friday.
Where'd the day go?
Yes.
Yeah, where did I could have sworn when I looked down, it was, it was morning and now it's afternoon. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they can't recount where they spent their time.
Yeah. Love it. Well, look, again, appreciate the conversation, Mark. Great stuff. Would love to point our listeners to check out your podcast if they haven't already. It's a great place for good information and good conversations just like this. And look, if you guys enjoyed this conversation, this show is part of our Small Business Delivered network, so you can check out a whole huge variety of shows in the business space about all different kinds of topics. Just check us out on smallbusinessdelivered.com. So again, this is Unlocking Growth. I'm your host, Brian Stone. Thanks again for giving your time to grow with us today. Until next time, I'm signing off.